I'm very, very, very excited about the next panel because it's almost like the brain trust of Africa is about to speak to us. I know the work Donny does about, with Bridge to Rwanda, Dale actually, with Bridge to Rwanda, talking about brain, brain drain. But I want to say that Africa has the best minds in the world, and we're going to hear from some of them today. Permit me to welcome Dr. Anu to the stage to moderate the next panel. Dr. Anu is a geneticist with Cobb-Vantress and is a special friend of my family, and I'm super proud that he said yes when I asked him to do this. Dr. Anu is a PhD, but he has about 3 degrees. Oh, no. He doesn't like this, and I'm enjoying myself right now. But he's lived in the UK, he studied in UK, he's traveled the world, really. And I'm super proud of him, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Auntie Tony. We call her Auntie Tony in my house, right, in my family, for giving us the stage, giving me the stage. So for the past 2 days, we've been going on and on and on and talking about trade with Africa. And for me, do me a favor at the back. When it gets to 5 minutes, just yell at me, okay, because I can talk forever. There's 2 things really struck at me yesterday. And one thing is what Salim said. Salim said the problem of Africa is our children don't have heroes to look up to. And then Chike said something as well. Chike said, what stories do you believe about yourself? Because it's the power of the media to form the image in your mind. So I'm going to tell you a story as a person who's come from the diaspora. There was once a group of people who were enslaved. They were enslaved for hundreds of years. And then one of them had the opportunity to get an education. He was educated in the courts of the king. He was raised up as a prince. But when he was 40, he realized that he couldn't live in the palace of the king when everyone else, including his mother, was living in slavery. So the man made a decision, and that changed the course of history. We're talking, of course, about Egypt. We're talking, of course, about the man named Moses. Moses came back and told the people of Israel that my God is bigger than your God. He told them that they had to believe that their God was more superior, that they were a special people, that they were people who had the backing of a God who could part the Red Sea. And guess what happened? Those people believed. Chike said that the tale of the hunt is told by the hunter. You won't go anywhere in Egypt and you hear the story of the Israelites that left. But we know that's a true story because we know that that actually happened. And so Moses had in his hand, he had a staff. And that's all that he had. I'm going to switch tails, and I'm going to ask you the question. Why are you here? For those of us in the diaspora, why are you here? Most of us are here because we believe in a dream. To life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Back in the day, people needed to come to America because this is where it was. But that's not the case today. Because with a mobile phone in your hand, you have access to the dream. And I've got to confess, I have a complete man crush on Scott Ford, okay? Because he said in his bones, he engaged the battle because of the fight. I grew up in Nigeria, West Africa, part of my life, okay? And there at school, you're taught the alphabets, right? So those of us who've grown up in Africa, A is for? A is for? Now I want you to ask the question. I'm a geneticist and I spend a lot of time testing people and testing animals to realize who the best was, okay? When you heard the word A is for apple, had you ever seen an apple before? Very few. Most of us had not seen apples when we were 3 or 4 years old growing up in Africa. You hadn't seen an apple. We were trained and we were selected for abstract thought. I want to tell you your story because the tale of the hunt is told by the hunter. We're framed by what we believe about ourselves. You were trained A is for apple. You went to schools and you were taught concepts that needed quite superior cerebral capacity. If you remember back in your day at school, for those of us who were here, you basically realized that you were actually smarter than most of the kids in your class. There's no way you would be sitting in this room as members of the diaspora if you were not excellent at what you did. You excelled in school, and then you had to wait outside the US Embassy for hours, and you were sweating. That's resilience. Scott Ford told me, I asked him, I said, Scott, because I had my man crush, I said, Scott, give me one piece of advice. How do you become successful? He looked at me and he said, resilience. You're here in this room because you have abstract capacity. You are supremely intelligent, and also you're resilient. You made it here, and then you had to learn physics, chemistry, biology, maths, economics. Most of these languages weren't your first language. You guys are in the top 5%, 2.5% of your fields. That's why you are here. You've been educated in the courts of the king, just like Moses, every single one of you. But where are your mothers? Where are your fathers? Where are your cousins? The day my grandmother died, I was in Virginia. I should have been home. For every one of us here, we've been given the privilege, and I'm going to ask you one question. What God asked Moses in front of the red burning bush? What's in your hand? What is in your hand? So, yesterday, Donnie Smith told us the story of the chicken farm, right? I'm a geneticist. I've been educated in some of the best schools in the world. God bless my family. What's in my hand? I've got a chicken in one hand, and I've got a fish in another. That's my fight. I've been to Kenya, I've been to Rwanda, I've been to Uganda, I've been to Ghana. I've traveled the world. What am I going to do with it? If you stare at purpose long enough, you have to act. Dale Dawson sat here. He grew up in Arkansas. He saw purpose and he acted. Donnie Smith stood here. He gave us this wonderful speech. He almost bankrupted his family. He says, I will bankrupt my children's future for the sake of developing and saving lives on the African continent. My man crush, Scott Ford, said to his wife, if you bankrupt me, we will do it. How about you? What is in your hand? Because what is in your hand is the tool that was given to you by your Creator to save people from poverty. And poverty really is not where my next meal is coming from. It's down to what Salim said yesterday. What do you believe about yourself? What is your story? Because sitting in this room are the heroes that hundreds of children need to see. They need to hear your story. So up on the panel, we're going to have people who have worked in law. We're going to have people who are from the diaspora. We're going to have people who have worked in commodities. So the faces are up on the board. I'm going to ask you guys to come and join me on stage. And they're going to tell you their stories. They're going to tell you their perspective of the roles of the diaspora. But for those of us who were born on the continent, who have the color of skin that is brown, who speak multiple languages, that have families across the globe, this is not the role of the diaspora. This is our responsibility. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, started with one chapter. We're humans because we have the ability to respond. You have the ability to respond. The choice is yours. Thank you. Right, Professor Uche, please.
Hello. So thank you all for staying and for your audience. I think I'll just start by introducing myself. And as the moderator already talked about, it's about what is in our hands and what is our story. And my own story, I grew up in Nigeria, I went to school in Nigeria. My early law degree was in Nigeria, and then I finished up at the University of London and at one of the best schools in the world, Harvard Law. And Harvard Law opened my eyes, and I think I will step back and thank the speakers from yesterday, because you will think I paid them to say everything they said about law and development, right? One speaker talked about corruption, institution, and regulatory, you know. The guy from World Bank talked about the Doing Business report. And you know that in the Doing Business report, the indices is a lot has to do with institutions and policy. Another report, most people don't even know, the Global Innovative Index. It's also about policy and regulation. So after Harvard Law School, I spent a year in Chicago, and I have been in the University of Arkansas. But that's not the only place where I teach. I actually also teach, I'm on the faculty at a university in Tanzania. And this was a university, their model was, instead of sending students up to the northern or western universities to study law and policy, that they will actually create the institution there and attract people from all over the world to come. So twice or three times a year, I go to Tanzania, and I teach things like intellectual property, international trade, compliance, and stuff like that. So that's the Tanzania part. Here in the United States too, I'm part of the American Bar Association. I've held leadership in American Bar Association as the chairman, co-chair of the Committee on Investment, the Committee on Corporate Social Responsibility, and most recently, I was appointed to the Committee on Corruption. And in that space, as part of the American Bar Association, we also advise and engage with governments. And then here at the faculty at the University of Arkansas, we're the first university to start a master's program in food and agricultural law. And we address just the relationship between law and agriculture, and you'll be surprised that law has a lot to do in agriculture, from credit to farmers to food safety to things like that. And as part of the faculty at the University of Arkansas, it's always very sad to me that many of our students are not from Africa. And they're not from Africa in large part because of money, you know, and in large part because the government will say they don't have the money, but many other governments from other parts are able to send their students. So that's part of what I've done and what I'm doing as the diaspora. And I think I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about just some of the challenges that I personally have encountered as somebody in the diaspora trying to connect with Africa. I'm going to be talking from my experience going to Africa 2 or 3 times a year to teach, my experience through the American Bar Association, and just through the Food and Agricultural Law program. So what are those challenges? This moderator already talked about just the diaspora. I see the diaspora as a bridge, right? A bridge, a transnational bridge, essentially. And so we're looking at several relationships. One is the relationship between the diaspora and the home country. But we're also looking at the relationship between the diaspora and the host country where we are. And then, of course, we're looking at the relationship between the diaspora amongst themselves. And I think that all those connections are very important for the project ahead. So I'm going to talk first of the challenges just as a person. What are those things that keep us back, right? I think you already started by saying that many of us do not even realize what is in our hands, right? Because even if you use the analogy of Moses, God said, "What do you have?" And it was a stick. And God, that was enough for God. And for me, my own stick is the law, right? I'm not going to use somebody. I'm not a software engineer. I'm not a chemist. My own stick is the law. And my effort now is to push and make people understand that law is important to development. You can't do anything without having that in place. And many times, in many development conferences, lawyers are not invited, right? Many trade conferences, lawyers, I think some of it is actually created by lawyers. We sometimes send the idea that we're troublemakers. Lawyers are actually not troublemakers, you know. So people believe we're troublemakers. So we're not brought on board at the beginning. It's usually when there's trouble and by then it's too late. So again, going back to this Global Innovation Index, because I teach intellectual property, innovation is at the core of everything that we're doing now. If you look at the Global Innovation Index from 2018, the focus was actually innovation in agriculture, right? And you look at the top 10 countries, then you look at the bottom 10 countries, there are no surprises there. The bottom 10 countries, most all of them are from Africa, except Yemen, okay? And so when I look at all those, the Global Innovation Index, the Global Competitiveness Index, the Doing Business Report, and even the Transparency International Corruption Index, you know that law is important. So my goal is to push and to keep pushing for people to understand the role of law in development, the need for institutions, the need for law, okay? So what are the challenges? I think one of the first challenges in my own field is that people minimize the role of law. And there are many other challenges. But what are the other challenges? I think one is just the mindset, right? The mindset, I think most of us have, and not just in the room, this mindset that maybe we can't do it, right? Maybe we're not equipped to do it. And I think we need to overcome that, because I think there's that legacy of colonialism where we feel that only the salvation for Africa is going to come from outside of Africa. I think we need to break down. And that problem is not just, even when I go to Africa, many times it takes an effort to get the government to listen to you. Sometimes they will rather listen to my research assistant, who is white, than listen to me. This is not about race relation, but the mindset in Africa that we don't have what it takes. And we need to address that. This is a room of friends, so we need to speak the truth here, right? And so many times when we go back, your first resistance might be from the government, who feels that you don't have what it takes, you know? And that's a big shock to the system, that I, Harvard law trained, and a government lawyer might rather listen to my research assistant than listen to me. That's a big put-off. Other problems is trust. Building that trust is not easy, okay? Another problem are the institutions. We're so used to hear the institutions that work. And so going back to encounter a situation where the institutions do not work, the tendency is to run back to our comfort zone, to run back to the West. But who is going to do the work? Okay? My own experience for the past 5 years or 10 years in Tanzania is that we have to stay in for the long haul. And many times, you're going to reap the reward not in the first year, not in the second year, not in the third year, but it takes a while to build the foundation. And with my own students in Africa now, I'm seeing those results. So those are some of the challenges. And the biggest, 2 or 3 other challenges, and I'll be quiet. One is, we didn't talk much about corruption, but corruption is a real problem. Corruption means that things do not work. And some countries are more corrupt than others. No names, we don't need to mention names. But some countries in Africa are just way too corrupt. And the question is, unless we are ready to fix that, nothing is going to work. Another problem is our educational system. Most countries in Africa are still using the educational system from the 50s that we inherited. And the system is designed for that era. The system we have an educational system that is disconnected from the environment. I'm talking as a lawyer. And a lot of things that were taught in law school has nothing to do with the law in Africa. A lot of the things the lawyers were training, we didn't train them. We trained them to read the books, to cram, but not to help the farmer. And so you find that in many African countries, we have lawyers that can serve the needs of the transnational companies, but cannot serve the needs of the local farmers. We have a system where the local farmers don't even think of lawyers as people that can help them. Okay? So this whole educational system needs to be changed. Not just in law, but in almost every field, there's a need to review all the curricula. I was speaking to my counterpart in South Africa, and I understand that in South Africa, there's actually a system now to review all their law curricula. That is very, very important. How much time do I have?
I think we're
keep going.
No,
keep going.
I think we're done.
Okay, I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Willy is going to talk to us about he's going to tell us his story.
So talking about my story, you know, guys, it's really amazing to be here. And usually when I start this kind of conversation, I say thank you to most of US taxpayers because they allow me to get a scholarship to get here. So by the way, let me go straight to the key point in this discussion, which is the role of the diaspora and how I view the role of the diaspora to Africa, to trade, for instance. And my perspective will be more in that aspect of commodity. But before I move, let me talk a little bit about myself. I'm an agronomist, raised and born in DRC, DR Congo, where I used to work with different organizations, especially international NGOs. And I were on the ground maybe for the last 15 years working with farmers, farmers association, cooperatives, to link them with the market, to help them to design small businesses, to find money, to find lending, and so on. So I had that kind of interaction. I learn a lot from them. I provide my kind of input to help them, and I end up with a kind of great success in that area. And then I was planning to say, okay, why not move in a kind of private business so that I can make more impact on these people? Because these are the people who will still in these villages, who rely on what they have as resources and so on. And why not be in a kind of private business with my own ideas and try to see how I can continue to provide my help to these people? And I said, okay, let me try to find more education. That will help me more. By the way, talking about commodity, let me say that commodity aspect. I think that as people of the diaspora, we have a kind of common mission. And that common mission is to fight poverty. Because, you know, poverty makes most of the situation, such as the challenges Dr. Uche mentioned, it make it more worsen, it make it more bad. Imagine you're already poor and you stuck in a conflict zone, for instance, or you have malnutrition, or you have food insecurity, and you have this and that. So that makes your situation more worse. It's a kind of cycle in which most of people in Africa are still stuck in, especially the people in rural areas, the place where I used to work with farmers. More than the half of the population now in Africa lives in rural areas, and they have their challenges. And when you try to look and to analyze what are those challenges they are facing, you'll see that one of the key points is most of them lack what we usually call the economics rights. They're not able to pay school fees. They're not able to pay medical fees. They're not able to do this and that for themselves. When you talk to a farmer, his first instinct, his first reflex is, okay, I'm planting this because I need cash. I need cash because the cash is going to help me to pay this. And you have mostly women who are really stuck in that, and they face the biggest burden you cannot imagine. I don't know if you can try even to imagine a woman farmer in Africa. She has to go to the field, to come back, to find water, to go to the market, to cook for the kid, to take care of the kid, and to take care of Papa also. I mean, you know? And it's just crazy. Can you imagine all that? And when you try to think and say, okay, how can we make an impact? How can we help these farmers? How can we help these people to raise from poverty, to move toward development? I'm talking here about development. From a rural perspective, development make more sense than economic growth even, because with economics you have more numbers, okay, the GDP, this and that. But development, I tell you, even in this morning, Richard mentioned it. You know, it has a kind of cultural tint. You know, it's a kind of people in rural areas. They have their own definition of development. They have how they perceive how his well-being is. Let me give you just one example. I used to work with NGOs, and I remember one day we had a program in one really remote area. And my colleagues went and I said, okay, we find this village, they need water, they have a problem with water. And they went in the central part of the village, they built a fountain. Guess what? Nobody used that fountain. Because those women in that area were used to go to the river to pick water. But when they go to pick water, it's also time to discuss, to learn from each other, to know what's going on in the village, to support those women who have been beaten by the husband, to talk about the kid who have disease and this and that. So you see that the kind of dynamics. And when you ask that woman to define what is development for you, she's going to give you her own definition of development. She has a kind of vision how she sees things. And at the end of the day, it's all those economics rights that can help such a woman to raise from poverty. Talking about the same economic rights, in my opinion, my perspective as an agronomist, as a producer, as a coffee farmer, by the way, I think we have some niche commodities, let me call them like that, which make a great impact in rural communities. Let me just give you the example, one crop I've seen in my country, coffee, Arabica coffee. Can we imagine in some villages where people were used to receiving aid from international NGOs? Today you have World Vision, after tomorrow you have another NGO come and this and that. They just bring those food aid, and people behave, I mean, their mindset is almost corrupted by that. So when now you move, and that was my own experience, in the same area, you come back and talk to them about development. They have a vision, but they were almost corrupted by that mindset of receiving. But if you really ask them to design their wishes, what they need, they'll tell you, yeah, we need something sustainable. I need to find a market for my coffee. And they tell you that. I don't want I don't want the middleman become like a con man who just come and pick my coffee and lie about the price. I want to have the premium price as well. And that is the area I'm still working on, that area of behavior change, behavior communication. And I think that one of the gaps in a country such as mine is that aspect of how does the research findings guide development. Most of decision makers, international NGOs, people on the ground, need to be guided. They need to have, okay, this is the right information I need so that I can help these people. The people on the ground, they say they need information about, okay, this is the market, how it looks like. So I see the diaspora as a kind of platform where we will be providing those information sharing opportunity, where we will be also doing a kind of networking, keeping together in touch and exchanging, learn from each other's, taking a lesson from this place to this one. And I'm also thinking that we still have a lot to do in terms of, okay, how do we really make to contribute to that human capital? Dr. Uche mentioned it. The education, how it's designed in our countries, it's almost really obsolete. I can really say that. You have people, he have a college degree, but he's almost lost. He don't know what he can do. Those people need just a little bit of mentorship, and they can do great things, I tell you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Juan. So before we move on to Mr. Polydor, Professor Uche talked about the role of the diaspora, and there are three main relationships: the diaspora to diaspora relationship, diaspora to the host country, and diaspora to the home country. What Willy has just talked about is diaspora to the host country. At this point, what he is, what we are people who interpret the needs of the people, okay? And so because we understand the culture, because we understand the people, because mostly we understand the language as well, we will actually act as interpreters, okay? People who transfer knowledge both ways, from our home to the host and to the host back. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Polydor.
Thank you. My name is Ms. Polydor Tangeli from Democratic Republic of Congo. I can start by introduce myself. I'm an occupational psychologist. I work for the government after my university, maybe 10 years, and I travel around the world. And I got two opportunities I can share to you. First, in 2005, I was in Lagos. And the Lagos airport, they write, I can talk about corruption, but they write something, I don't know if even now it's written. People from Nigerian. Something like, everywhere you go, everything you can do, don't forget Nigerian. Something like that. In 2009, I traveled to United States, especially in Little Rock. I was invited by the Department of State to participate to the International Visitor Leadership Program. And during my 1 week stay in Little Rock, I was a little bit confused. I was thinking that Americans are mysterious people. Americans think differently than Congolese. But I exchange with them normally, and I realized that I have something to give to anyone in this world. But during my last day, everybody asked me, why are you going back? There is no life in your country. You can stay here. There is many opportunities. And I say, no, I will go back. And I travel. And I travel. At the airport, I meet the Njili airport.
In Kinshasa.
I'm in Kinshasa. I meet my close friend who came to give me a ride. Say, I'm a little bit confused. Why are you back? So I realized that there is kind of misconception beside. There is life in United States because of work. Your ancestors work hard to make change in the United States. And in Kinshasa, people does not work. So I decide to initiate something which can resolve this kind of misconception. And we create with my colleague Group Mosala. Which means Mosala, which means work. So Congolese need to work to become like American. Why to work? Because in my country, young people, they usually dream about traveling to United States without passport, without money, but they usually dream to travel to Europe. So what we are doing, we decide to do, is to tell them that you have a good mind. Why? Why are you wasting your energy to dream like that? You have to work. But what kind of work? Because there is no job in my country. The rate of unemployment is very high. So we decide to promote youth entrepreneurship. We are working at high school to allow people to change the mind skills, to gain more about how to analyze the opportunity in Congo and to create job by their own initiative. So about diaspora, what can I say? In my country, recently we did a research and we realized that the largest donor in my country are the diaspora. It's not the World Bank, it's not the Fonds Monétaire International, FEDB, it's the international NGO. So, what I learned about this kind of data is that Congolese diaspora need to network, to move from ecosystem to ecosystem. Can I question Nigerian diaspora here? What do you do together to better Nigeria? Wow. You are sending money to your family directly, to your relatives, but it's not impactful. You need to network. You need to move from your ecosystem to the ecosystem. So, to conclude, because Mr. Hano is so stressed, I can say that I have something in my hand. It's Group Mosala.
Amen.
And I've made many things in my country. Nowadays, we are reviewing our curricula to put on entrepreneurship courses. And I usually move to United States, especially in Arkansas, because I have an Arkansas travel. And I try to talk to people here about Congo, investment opportunity, and to allow something like a leakage between Arkansas and my country. So sorry for my English. I'm coming from.
It's good. It's good.
Thank you. I come from a French-speaking country, but bonjour.
Okay, so Mr. Polido has added another component to our puzzle. He talked about networking and the power of synergy. There's a guy here called Tem Adeyemo. Is he here? Wave at me, buddy. So Tem has challenged me profusely, and this is what he did. His wife had a business, and he tried to establish that here. But that didn't work so well, so he went back to Lagos, Nigeria. And he's doing extremely well, but then he stared the word purpose in the face. And I just want to say God bless Mrs. Umesiri for bringing us together, okay? Because the impact that's going to have is immense. And so, networking. And here's the challenge. I know we've all exchanged cards, okay? It can't end there. We need to follow up. For those of you who have $2,000, $3,000 sitting in your emergency fund with a bit of extra, well, how about putting that and seeding that into someone's future so you can change someone else's story. Okay? We'll come back to that in a minute. Now, Dr. B.
Dr. B.
Okay, my full name is Muchengetwa, and I laugh because people try to pronounce it and they butcher it all the time. But it has saved me. One time I got pulled over by a cop, and he looked at my license and he said, "Dude, I can't pronounce this name. It's my first time to see such a long name. I'll let you go." But anyway, I'm from Zimbabwe. I grew up in a family of, my mom had 8 kids, and my dad died when I was 5. So my mom had no education. So she struggled to give us food to eat. And I remember she would even struggle to get fees as little as $2 for me to go to school. So at times, we would spend half of the semester at home because we could not afford to go to school. So she said to us, she said, "My kids, I can never take you out of poverty." I had my first pair of shoes when I was 15. I remember at that time, the only pair of clothes that I had were a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, and my mom's blouse that I used to wear, and people would laugh at me that I'm wearing a woman's clothes. But she would tell us and say, education is your way out of poverty. So as a result, with my 3 siblings, we would go to the library, we would stand outside when it opened at 9 in the morning, and we would sit there and read until the library closed. My classmates, because I would miss half of the semester because of not affording to pay school fees, they would be surprised that by the time I come, I would catch up with them and be ahead of them. And they never understood why. But it was because I realized education was my only ticket out of poverty. It's not that I was intelligent, but I realized with so much knowledge that is in front of me, if I can read and read until I get it, I think I'll make it. So much so that I read a book on electronics. I went home and took apart my mom's little radio and tried to connect it back. I couldn't do it. But it was because I said to myself, I want to try to take what I'm reading and apply it. So fast forward to me coming to US of A. I've been here for 14 years. I love education, I love reading, I love books. I realized that back home in my country of Zimbabwe, there are kids who don't have much like the way I grew up, who basically don't have food to eat, who basically don't have money to go to school. And I said to myself, I need to do something about that. Because when I first came to America, I had the American dream, basically of saying I want to own a big house, drive a nice 3 or 4 nice cars. But then I realized for the change that I want to see in Africa, if I don't start doing something, then who's going to do it? Mm-hmm. So what I did is I went to my community where I grew up. It's called Highfields, and where it's the poor, where the poor of the poor live. And I've been feeding orphans and widows every month. I've been paying school fees for kids to go to school because I realize some of those kids, if they're educated, they can rise up one day and become the leaders of tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I know that I cannot impact the whole of Zimbabwe, but so far I'm like, if I start with small, Mother Teresa said, if you cannot change 100 lives, start with what? With 1. Mm-hmm. So I've said to myself, if I can just start with a few, and it's so funny, like he said, the diaspora, we can make change in small portions. And the impact, maybe we may not see today, but we'll see it in the future. Amen. So the Africa that we want, the responsibility is in us. Guys, if we leave this place today and don't network and don't make changes back home in Africa, we are stupid. I'll repeat. If we don't network and make changes back home in Africa, we are stupid. Because listen to me, I went to a school where half of my fellow students that I finished high school with are dead because of AIDS. I'm not sitting here because I'm intelligent, no. I believe I have a destiny to change the lives of my people. So do you. So I'm saying the onus is on us to make a difference. Let's start now. After listening last night, seriously, like, I couldn't sleep. Like, my friend Wale was like, Dr. B, you look like you didn't sleep. I'm like, yeah, I was up until 4 in the morning, writing down ideas of what I need to do. So much that I reached out to my, I'm friends with my Minister of Education, because I realized the education system needs to change. We can't continue having the same colonialization, like colonial-minded education system that is in Africa. For example, my country of Zimbabwe, right? We've got 250,000 students that finish high school. Out of those, only 50,000 progress to do A-level, which is like post-secondary education. Out of those 50,000, there's only 3,000 places for university. So basically, if you don't qualify and pass to go to the post-secondary, you are nothing in society. A position of team making, a team maker, you need what we call 5 O-levels. If you don't have those, you are not qualified to make tea. And I look at that education system, I'm like, that needs to change. So even, let's talk about corruption, right? Why not start at grade 3 level? Classes that teach kids about ethics, that teach kids about leadership, that teach kids about entrepreneurship. Why not start that? So when I talk to him, he's like, so can you write maybe some curriculum and we'll see if we can implement it. I'm like, yep, I'm gonna do it, right? I'm just saying to us guys, the solutions to Africa is in our hands. What Don Smith and the other guys have done, they're just trying to show us, hey guys, it can be done. Are there no rich people in Africa? So all I'm saying, start somewhere. Small. It may be 5 people that you're what? Changing. 5 people. Guys, my community where I grew up, they've nicknamed me the donor because of what I'm doing. It's not because, some of them think that I've got a tree that drops money at the back of my backyard. And I tell them, guys, I do this because I know that I've been placed in a better place and I've got a responsibility to lift others to become better than me. And I'm saying all of us can do it. Thank you.
So when we got together to discuss about this panel, and Chris Folayan was with us as well, and we basically sort of did a Stephen Covey. We started with the end in mind and worked backwards. And the question here was this: what does a win look like for us from this session moving forward? What does a win look like? And it really boiled down to what actually Polydor said. And ironically, he wasn't in that meeting because he was in the DRC at the time. We talked about a network, a Trade with Africa network, that basically says, you know what? If I'm an NGO looking to go to Africa to work on fish, well, I know a thing or two about fish. Okay? And not only do I know a thing or two about fish, I know a lot of people who know a lot about fish. And so if you're in the diaspora, we'll ask you to go on there and sign up to a LinkedIn group that says, okay, do you know what? This is where your resource is. So actually, Chris called it sort of like a numbed-down LinkedIn, basically a database resource of people with your skills. Everybody in this room who lives and works in America is extremely skilled. So Dennis said yesterday, he looked at a panel. There was Donnie Smith, there was Scott, and there was Dale. And I was sitting here thinking about what Chike said. He said, what's your story? When the story of Rwanda is told, there is no way those 3 men will not be mentioned. When the story of Rwanda, when the history of Rwanda is written, these guys' names are etched in stone. They have influenced a country forever. There are 54 countries in Africa. They've got one. Who has the next? Who has the next? When people call your name, Amin said that we needed heroes. Dale is my hero, and he's a hero of many people that I know. People need heroes. Dennis, would you be a hero? Right, now we've got 10 or 15 minutes worth of questions if we got time. Yes? So we got questions. Yes, sir.
My name is Abi Adeleke. I'm originally from Nigeria. Dr. Anu challenged us. He said, what role does the African diaspora community have in transforming various sectors and fast-tracking economic growth for Africa? And my comment and my, what are the action steps that we can take? I've lived here now, this is my 26th year in the United States. And we're at the point where we want to do a lot from being in the diaspora back home. I just started a business back home and wanting to shuttle back and forth. However, historically, and I can only speak for Nigeria, we have not trusted each other. We have not trusted each other to collaborate on anything. We have not trusted each other to share ideas because we feel somebody is going to take the ideas and run with it. If we have trusted each other, this room should be full of the Nigerian community that is in the area. And there's a sizable number of us in this area. So we have not trusted each other. But now let's put that aside. What are the action steps that we can take? Where can we go from here? And I'm not just singling out Nigeria. Where can we go from here as an African community in diaspora? Because we're one. When people look at us, they just say, we're Africans. Nobody says, oh, you're from Malawi, or you're from Zimbabwe, or you're from whatever. They don't even know whether we're from anywhere else. We just know that we're non-African Americans. Mm-hmm. So where can we go from here?
Thank you. Now, Dennis has been wanting to ask a question. We've got 5 minutes left. So what we'll do is we'll listen to Dennis's question, and then we'll answer both of them at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I've been looking forward to this question. All right, hope you're ready. So I definitely appreciate the comment where you are asking if any of us will be willing to step to the challenge to be a hero. My question is, must I move home to be your hero?
No.
And I was hoping for a little bit more insight on that. Besides the yes or no answer, so I hope you can
I can explain quickly. To be a hero, you don't wake up one morning and say, I want to be a hero. You see a need, you step in, and you do something about it.
Period.
Then people themselves call you a hero. You don't have to say, hey, I want to be a hero. You see a need, and you just say, okay, I need to do something about it. By doing that, you're being a hero.
So effectively, I think my definition of a hero is somebody who changes someone else's story. So to Ms. Abby's point, diaspora to diaspora, one relationship. Diaspora to the host country, one relationship. Mm-hmm. Diaspora to home. A lot of us focus on diaspora to home. Mm-hmm. There are 2 or 3 guys that I invest my time in, mentoring them. That is diaspora to diaspora. It's my responsibility. Diaspora to diaspora. Me and my son, diaspora to diaspora. Okay? Me and my nephew, diaspora to home country. Me and Mr. Zemesiri's son, diaspora to diaspora. Business is built around relationships. Okay, Dennis? So, as Dr. B said, you have skills that will blow people away. Okay? There's that lady beside you who has a need in Rwanda for software development. You don't need to go home. You partner with Dale beside you and say, Dale, I've got skills in IT. How can I help? How can I help? Forward. Now, to Auntie Abby's point, one more time before I pass this on, we're going to build it. We need to build a network of people. So when Dale is looking for an expert, he goes to one shop, okay? When we're looking for mentors, you've got a guy who is heading a mentoring organization. Step up. Step up. Sorry, Doctor. Yeah, go ahead.
I was about also to contribute to answer to the question to my sister here when she mentioned that aspect of within the diaspora, people who don't understand each other. And, in most cases, it's around business, I think. And I think one of the mistakes most of people do is you start a business bringing some items from Africa. We have an idea in mind, okay, my African folks are going to buy my products. I think one of our responsibilities as the people in the diaspora is to be able to help our sisters and brothers with those kind of small, brief market studies. Okay, what's going on? Who need this kind of product in this area? Is it the right product? That's why I mentioned the aspect of niche product. It's not anything that can be brought here and say, okay, I'm going to bring apples to the US. No, I mean, that has to have that in mind. And I think while we start networking properly and talking, I mean, honestly, in terms of what I want, what I expect from Anu or from Dr. Uche, it may make things more clear. You know, we may not be friends, but we may be partners. It's a business. I mean, it's a kind of another kind of friendship, let me call it like that, you know. And it's a starting point. So let's think about that. Let's drive our business ideas based on fact. That is one of my fight. Thank you.
I think what has been said, and going back to what you said, that if we can live today with the network, and I think I already said it from the beginning, the three dimensions, right? The diaspora to diaspora, that's what we need to enhance, perhaps through what Tony has started, and see how because many times we duplicate efforts instead of pulling our resources together. So instead of duplicating, one can build on what others have started. That is one problem that we've always had. Yeah. Building so many small networks and that's where the trust comes in. So we can have a post-conference meeting on how Ms. Tony can continue and strengthen the network and then partner with other networks. You know, that would be diaspora to diaspora. But another question is, how do we engage with the host community and with the investors in the host community? There are many investors that are from United States. They go to Africa, but they don't talk to, because they don't know that maybe they lack of awareness, and we don't engage because many times we are looking inside. So I will encourage us who are in the diaspora to engage well with the host community. You know, if it's scientists, maybe you go to the Scientific Association of America, you connect with that. I tell you that many times I go to the American Bar Association, I don't see many lawyers. Sometimes we feel that it's not relevant. Sometimes we think it's just the Nigerian Lawyers Association. So there's that need to engage back with the host community and build relationships, right? Because we are the conduit. And then, of course, with the government. That is also an area where the relationship needs to be strengthened. A good number of the African governments have started to develop programs for diaspora, but that needs to be strengthened, And again, that's where sometimes there's lack of communication and lack of trust. So if there are government people here, that can be another post-conference session. This is really a meeting of like-minded people. Yeah. We all mean well. There's really no need for any kind of... So if after this conference we can have government diaspora post-conference session so that the people from the government side and the diaspora side can talk about the way forward, that would be wonderful. So that and if we in the diaspora can engage with the host community, maybe at 5 o'clock today, then that's another one. Okay? Yeah. The University of Arkansas, I'm affiliated there. We're happy to support anything that we want to do. But I think that out of this conference, there should be at least 3 post-sessions, aimed at building on, so that by next year, we're looking at the next level, right? The next level. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, last question. Sorry.
Mine is not actually a question.
Oh, good.
It's based on a question I was going to ask that Sister Abby did ask, which is good. I think the reason why Don and Scott and all succeeded in Rwanda is because they had political power behind the work that they were doing. Yeah, they had political support from the highest level. And I know that when I talk to people, I keep saying, the place of NGO is there. The place of private sector is there. But there's a need for political engagement. A lot of things that we do, we need political power to be able to do them, especially in Africa. So my point to what Sister Abby said is, how can we engage? I know that I talked to somebody yesterday about people running for office at the local level. We should stop focusing on being president of Nigeria and senatorial positions. So our role should be to go and support those people we know who can bring change to their communities to start running for office. Because come 2019, we're not ready to take over power in any shape or form. Okay. Come 2023, we will still be there. But as long as we want to make change, we need to go back to the grassroots.
Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to appreciate the panel.